North Korea is one of the most unique authoritarian regimes in the world. This tightly controlled country forces its people to live under harsh conditions, with constant surveillance, strict limits on freedom, and severe punishments. Women in the North Korean army face unimaginable horrors. Testimonies reveal shocking stories. They are forcibly recruited, subjected to extreme military discipline, and often become victims of sexual violence by their superiors. Their living conditions are terrible, with serious health risks due to a lack of proper sanitation and shortages of basic hygiene products. Food is scarce, and they endure exhausting workdays. Even pregnant women are forced to do hard labor, and in some cases, face forced abortions or have to give up their babies. These women, often silenced, endure a never-ending cycle of suffering and oppression. There are other dark realities in the lives of North Koreans, and that's what we're going to explore together. Stay with us until the end and hold on tight. Here are the most unbelievable things happening in North Korea. Throughout history, many royal families have captured public interest, such as the Habsburgs, the Tudors, the Romanovs, and the Capuchins if we go further back in time. North Korea's Kim Dynasty also deserves a spot on this list. Unlike most countries, North Korea isn't ruled by elected leaders, but by a family dynasty, where each member is groomed from birth to lead. This makes North Korea almost unique on the global political stage. Although it isn't officially a monarchy, its system of power and leadership functions very much like a royal dynasty or hereditary monarchy. There are no crowns, scepters, or royal titles, but the Kim family holds absolute and unquestionable authority. It all started with Kim Il-sung, a historic figure who rose to power after the Japanese occupation and founded North Korea in 1948. Since then, the country has operated more like a monarchy than a people's republic, despite its official name. Kim Il-sung was more than just a head of state. To the North Korean people, he was a near-divine figure surrounded by a cult of personality based on Juche, the country's official ideology promoting absolute power for the leader. Even after his death in 1994, he remains North Korea's eternal president. His image is everywhere, with over 34,000 statues and portraits of him across the country. The regime has even created a mythical narrative about his birth, claiming it was foretold by a fisherman and marked by a rainbow. Surprisingly, many people in North Korea genuinely believe these stories. What makes the Kim Dynasty unique is its longevity. The official stories about the skills and achievements of its members often stretch the truth. Kim Jong-il, the son of Kim Il-sung, inherited both his father's power and his legendary status. Similarly, state propaganda credits him with extraordinary accomplishments. For example, he is said to have written 1,500 books during his university years and created 6 operas in just 2 years, all hailed as masterpieces. Clearly, the regime greatly exaggerates the leader's achievements to strengthen its grip on the people and maintain an image of perfection. Finally, Kim Jong-un, the current leader and third generation of the dynasty, rose to power surprisingly quickly. Married to Ri Sol-ju and father to Kim Ju-ae, he rules the country with an iron fist. Despite North Korea's economic struggles and international tensions, Kim Jong-un remains highly revered by the people. In North Korea, a simple item has taken on extraordinary symbolism. The calendar, specifically the Juche calendar. This unique calendar has been in use since 1997, with its years based on the birth of the country's founder, Kim Il-sung. In the past, the government would give one of these special calendars to every household each December. However, times have changed, and due to inflation, families now have to buy them. These calendars are expensive, and not everyone can afford one. As a result, they have become symbols of social status, wealth, and loyalty to the regime. The most prestigious versions, printed in Pyongyang, are extremely costly. Cheaper, locally made versions are available, but of lower quality. Even these are out of reach for many citizens. In short, calendars have become a clear marker of the divide between the rich and the poor. The COVID-19 pandemic has made the situation worse. Border closures and disrupted trade with China have caused shortages of the paper and ink needed to produce the calendars. On top of that, North Korea's worsening economic conditions and food shortages have turned this once common item into a luxury for most people. Today, these calendars are often sold secretly at sky-high prices. North Korea fascinates people largely because of its extreme isolation. In this country, every part of life is controlled by a strict dictatorship. Information is tightly filtered, and access to the outside world is almost entirely cut off. Often called the last stronghold of totalitarian communism, this description fits for a reason. Movement is highly restricted both within and beyond the country. North Koreans are frequently forbidden from traveling abroad, and even moving within the country often requires special permits. Education is another tool of control. From a young age, children are taught to worship their leaders as near-divine figures. This early indoctrination prevents dissent, but any hint of opposition is met with brutal repression and a strategy of fear. The government uses extreme measures, including forced labor camps, to punish anyone seen as a threat to the regime's stability. Entire families can be punished for the actions of one member. North Korea enforces harsh punishments, including the death penalty for a wide range of offenses. These range from serious crimes like murder to actions that, in other countries, would be seen as basic freedoms. For example, consuming media not approved by the state or practicing unapproved religious beliefs can lead to execution. The regime has almost zero tolerance for any foreign influence. Though public executions are hard to verify due to the secrecy of the government, defectors report such events. They describe incidents like a factory manager being executed for making international phone calls, or people being killed for attempting to cross the border or handling anti-government propaganda. These extreme measures aim to instill fear and ensure loyalty to the regime. The international community has criticized North Korea's severe punishments, accusing the country of ignoring basic human rights. However, North Korea dismisses these accusations, claiming they are attempts to undermine its sovereignty. North Korea strives to be unique in every way, even in technology. Instead of using Windows, they created their own operating system called Red Star 3.0. It was designed to look like Apple's macOS, but with features tailored to their country. The world learned about Red Star 3.0 when Will Scott, a former Google employee, visited Pyongyang University of Science and Technology. He managed to buy a copy of the system, offering a glimpse into North Korea's digital life. Red Star 3.0 has some unique characteristics. For instance, users can't select all time zones. Seoul's time zone is completely missing. The text editor and file manager are styled to resemble Apple's Finder. The web browser, called Ninara, is based on Mozilla Firefox but heavily modified. By rejecting Western innovations, North Korea has worked hard to be self-reliant, and when it comes to technology, they have succeeded in creating their own approach. In North Korea, there is no internet as we know it. Instead, they have Kwangmyong, a national intranet that gives citizens access to a very limited version of the web. The content on this intranet is strictly controlled, mostly focusing on education and propaganda. For example, any mention of leaders like Kim Jong-il, Kim Il-sung, or Kim Jong-un is highlighted with text that is 20% larger. It's a rule. Only a small group of elite scientists and students can access the real global internet to support learning and progress in key areas for the state. But for the average North Korean? Not a chance. However, despite these strict restrictions, outside influences still find a way in. South Korean dramas and news on USB drives are smuggled across borders. Some North Koreans living near the Chinese border even manage to use foreign Wi-Fi networks. Still, North Korea remains a place where access to information is a rare privilege. But what about the arts? Does North Korea encourage them? The answer is yes, but it might not surprise you. Artistic expressions are mainly focused on strengthening the cult of the ruling family. Tens of thousands of statues are scattered across the country in honor of one man, Kim Il-sung, the state's founder. If you walk through the streets, you'll see an urban landscape dominated by massive representations of the country's leaders. These statues aren't just decorative, they also contribute to the economy, as some socialist-style artworks are exported abroad. Recently, the government made an unusual decision. Foreigners are no longer allowed to visit these monuments. While no official reason was given, rumors suggest the regime is primarily concerned about acts of vandalism. In North Korea, damaging a statue is considered not just a grave insult, but also a capital crime. During the COVID-19 pandemic, North Korea faced many challenges. Imports were scarce, and the country suffered from a severe shortage of fertilizer and other essential resources. During this critical time, the government demanded collective efforts from the population to produce large amounts of natural fertilizer. Each household had to provide 200 kilograms, and each company worker 500 kilograms. North Koreans were required to turn their own waste into compost. Even urine was collected for this purpose. Farmers were required to contribute at least 2 liters of urine to help make the fertilizer. But did citizens meet the quotas set by the government, like the 200 kilograms per household? The answer is yes. They didn't really have a choice. The authorities introduced a pass system, and only those who provided enough fertilizer were allowed to visit the markets. Those who didn't meet the requirements faced restrictions on their movement. When the North Korean government sets a rule, they make sure it is strictly enforced.